Whenever we think of the Super Nintendo or SNES era and the sort of gaming and fond memories that we have, I think one of the first things that comes to mind is the difference between PAL systems and of course American or NTSC systems and the games. Now, apart from the actual consoles that we're all familiar with, there was of course a striking difference between the cartridges, this being an American cartridge and this being the sort of cartridge that you would get on all sorts of countries that used PAL systems, whether it be Europe, Australia, Canada and the like. Now, very much of this difference isn't really functional per se, in the sense that apart from making it basically impossible to be connected to the system of the other country, the real difference here is PR. It's marketing, this being more targeted towards American audiences for reasons that I will cover when I make a dedicated video to these cartridges. But today we are looking at perhaps the most important aspect of marketing and PR in this era of gaming, which is the boxes. You see, in the 80s and 90s, the situation was very different when it came to trying and convincing potential customers to buy your product in terms of gaming. In the sense that very much in that period was based on the idea of you do judge a game by its cover. I mean, think about it. Today, you have all of those influencers and YouTubers. You have someone like, I don't know, Jacksepticeye plays an indie game and then their sales are boosted like 700% overnight. Well, something like that didn't really happen, and even though you did have TV commercials occasionally, in a majority of cases people would just decide, or we as kids and teenagers, we would just decide to buy a game because it looked awesome, even though we perhaps had never heard of it. Now, of course, another two ways to kind of find out about these were magazines, although then again, for me, they started to become a thing in the late 16-bit era. Of course, this will vary. In fact, let me know in the comments. But when it comes to like 8-bit era, I would just step in a shop with my parents or my cousins and friends, and we would just look at the box art, and most importantly the screenshots in the back, and then we'll decide, hey, this looks awesome, let's get it. So in the majority of cases, you really needed to work tremendously in the engineering of what was presented here. And all of this marketing engineering and strategies are absolutely represented into the massive differences that you have in the box art, but also color choices, particularly when it comes to colors, between American approaches and the European and PAL approaches, respectively. One of the main things being the fact that, generally speaking, PAL systems and cartridges tend to have box art that is much more colorful, whereas in America things were tended, it's not always the case, but tended to be kept black. And one of the reasons has to do with the fact that the idea over in Europe is that, well, colors attract, and kids and teenagers like colors, so they're gonna love the box art when it's nice and colorful. But this, for some reasons, from a marketing perspective over in America, was seen as ineffective, in the sense that, yeah, pretty colors are nice for children, but we want to show this to be badass. This needs to be cool, so that they were looking for that sort of reaction from the customers. So with that sort of difference in strategy in mind, let's compare some of the games that I have in my collection that are duplicates, but simply because one is NTSC and one is PAL. Let's go. Starting with F-Zero, I do want to underline that the very blue or light blue cover or box is the English version. In fact, in Italy, this would have been black, just like in America. So what I was talking about earlier doesn't always apply, and it's not always the same. One thing that we did the same in Italy as they did in England is that in the back we had this little comics approach, which I thought was amazing. The American marketing team instead seemed to sort of wanted to still focus on a more typical series of screenshots to illustrate the game, which also looks great. Looking at Super Mario Kart, then we have a lot to see. Once again, American version is black. The two versions that you see when it comes to PAL, they are two different versions, the red one being a little bit of a special version, but personally I love the coloring. I think it just looks great, also because of the type of game this is. It's a fun game, it's a funny game. All the characters are already bringing in so many colors. I think the colored boxes are much better, and when we look at the back we see that the screenshots are exactly the same. Identical. Super Mario World is another one that in PAL version will have this bright yellow coloring, whereas in America this was again black for what I remember. Super Ghosts and Ghosts is one of those that is a little bit of an exception. I've seen it in purple, which I think is the best iteration. But once again, in a lot of PAL regions this was also shown in black, and so is Mortal Kombat. But these having sort of a horror, hardcore theme, I think it matches. But when it comes to Disney, I love the bright orange of this Mickey Mania, or the Italian version, I just think you can't beat it. It's just beautiful. Star Fox and Star Wing, which are the same game but with two different titles, are an example where we see that not only the colors are different, but so is the box art and the title. Now, I think Star Wing is a better sounding title, but Star Fox is somehow more fitting in the American version. When it comes to the box art, I tend to prefer the European version or the PAL version, because I keep saying European, but they use it the same in Canada. But in this case, it's the American version that is more colorful, so probably I'm just being biased. When it comes to the back, I've got to give it to the Americans. Even though the Europeans show the team in a really epic posture, the Americans managed to slip in an extra screenshot, which I think is a win. Street Fighter 2 is another one that is kind of interesting. Here I've got an NTSC version, black box, but in Italy it was gold. I wish I could find one. And of course, when we look at Super Street Fighter Turbo, well, the PAL version is freaking violet, which I think was awesome. Alright, noble ones, well, I hope that you enjoyed this video and this sort of brief discussion about the differences between these sort of boxes between NTSC and PAL, but I will make more dedicated videos, perhaps the difference between the Super Nintendo approach to box games, that is mostly cardboard, as opposed to, like, for example, what Sega did with full-on hard plastics already from the times of the Master System. We'll have a dedicated video to that and other marketing strategies of the 80s and the 90s on this channel, so make sure to subscribe and join the Protectorate.